There are a lot of things that are unique, and then there's things that are quite special. And then there's things like this, the Larry versus Harry Bullitt cargo bike. The Larry versus Harry Bullitt cargo bike. This is such a cool bike, and I want to review this today. This belongs to my brother-in-law, Gary Parker, and so he's going to tell you all about this bike and how he uses it and why he got this bike and things like that. It's an awesome, awesome bike. And so this is my brother-in-law, Gary, who owns the bike, and he knows a lot more about this bike than I do. How long have you had this bike now?
At least a couple of years. We have two of them. The first one we bought several years back, had it shipped in as a complete bike. It is from Copenhagen, Denmark, and the nearest dealer is actually just outside of DC, Washington, DC on the north side. The bike that is my wife's was brought in pieces from Copenhagen. They built it there at the shop, palletized it, and shipped it to us here in Jupiter, Florida as a complete bike. Later, at least a couple of years later, I think it was, I decided to build a second one and had him bring in just a black frame set, which we were out on the road in our RV and stopped by and rendezvoused with him so we could pick it up and brought it back with us. And then it took a while for me to collect all the components that I wanted and get around to it to put it together into a complete bike. But I built this one up just from a frame set, and I will explain how this differs a little bit from the both our other one as far as the basic bike and the ones you'll typically see if you go online and look this up, particularly if you see any in use in Denmark. This is a 3x11 drivetrain on this. They do many drivetrain options, including an E version, which they recently started producing of this. Notable differences from the standard setup on this bike are the shock absorbing seat post, a rear rack that is not typical, and this setup right here, this is something I added onto the bars. I used this setup on two different bikes that gives me both fully upright, just touring position, sightseeing position I call it. This is the working position or business position, and this is long distance cruising, you know, getting aero or just relaxing, getting the weight off your wrists and onto your forearms. Also makes a nice console area there. I'm constantly throwing things up here, is great. I will show you what is the typical arrangement and use of the cargo area. Most people who use this bike will have at minimum a deck in this area, and it's typically bolted in place. This is plywood. Most often people will even build their own out of plywood, and they get really artistic with these things. The manufacturer actually makes a honeycomb and aluminum sandwich material board that goes here. I think that's rubberized on the surface, and it has a little front piece that closes in this area. So at minimum, they would have that, and then beyond that would be something like this. If I can get it in here. There are bolt points all over. This would get bolted in place. And then from here, you would pile in groceries, kids, dogs, whatever you want to ride around. That's the typical configuration for the cargo space and how most people use it. For my applications, I prefer leaving the frame bare, and then rather than bolting anything in place, I have quick change out assemblies. I tend to strap in place so I can swap them out quickly. So for example, rather than a heavier plywood bin like I showed you previously, just a simple tote from Home Depot minus its lid fits this space nicely. Say we're carrying our two small dogs with us. This will drop right in here. A pair of ratchet straps right through these slots and around the frame secures it in place. Fill it full of blankets. Attach a couple of leashes and drop the dogs in, clip them in, and away we go. Works great. When I'm done doing that, I pull the straps, pull this right back out. Here is what I most often use is this Pelican case. And It drops in and keys in right there. And on a smooth surface, it wouldn't go anywhere just there, but with nothing more than that, certainly no bolts. I most often throw one ratchet strap around it, and it's secured. So this is both lockable, it's watertight, I can sit on it, stop and take a break, or even cook on it in this solar cooker that I can ride along and operate while I'm riding. The reason I would want to do such a thing as cooking while I'm riding is that this is my preferred bike for long distance touring type riding, carrying my camping gear, which is what would be in here. Then of course a meal along the way makes perfect sense in that context. This is a case that I actually already had that just conveniently worked out perfectly, but you can see the interior volume in here. It's large enough to certainly go grocery shopping with and pile full of 4 or 5 bags of groceries. Tall enough inside to put in, you know, gallon-sized jugs or anything like that, so it's real handy. But lockable, and I can lock it to the bike and then lock the bike up. So in a touring situation, I can simply lock all this up, take the trunk that's normally on the back that has my valuables and quick access items, take that off, go into a grocery store, stop at a museum, whatever I want to do, not have to worry about all that valuable gear that's sitting on my bicycle.
Well, as you can see, this is a super cool bike, and you know, Gary uses this all the time. In fact, you use this to go to work. You ride this.
This is my ride back and forth to work, and I don't always use the case for that. Sometimes I just throw a flat deck on there and throw one of my large panniers on top of it and call it good. But more often than not, I'll just go ahead and put the case on there. I never know when Elaine might want me to stop in at the grocery store, or I'm always carrying things back and forth to work, and it's just so handy.
So you use it to go back and forth to work, but you also use it for some type of like road touring and things like that. It's kind of become what we've joked around and said the BRV. The bicycle
RV. Yes.
Bicycle RV.
Yes.
Because he also carries, what he didn't say he does in here is he has a hammock, right? And
I use my hammock, you know, for overnighting in is my preferred thing. So it's a lightweight nylon hammock.
But there's a specific thing about the hammock. It's
treeless. I have a South Florida. There are trees. They're not very good for attaching hammocks to, and they're usually surrounded by a swamp. So once you're off the coast, that is, and you're not on somebody's landscaping. I love sleeping in the hammock, and it, you know, complete with large tarp and mosquito screen and the whole setup like that. But I needed to overcome the tree problem, so I made a pair of telescoping aluminum poles. And I guy them. I carry 4 ground anchors that's capable of doing a pair of guys on each pole to resist the pull of the hammock. And they actually are underneath this case right now and help key it into the frame. Oddly enough, it just worked out nicely. And so that whole setup, if you saw my camp setup, you'd be surprised it was all carried on a bicycle.
I'll make sure and put a picture on there so you can see it. It's pretty awesome.
It's very comfortable.
Well, thanks for showing us the bike, man. This is such a cool bike, and I hope you enjoyed seeing this. You know, we've been wanting to ride together for a while, and so we're going to close this off, and we're going to go ride these things and go out.
That's right.
And go check out some bike lanes and stuff. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this little video.
Take care.
It is very strange.